Hi there, Simon from simonwoods.com here. It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas. Well, 5 Cabernet Sauvignons might help me on my way to Christmas. First one, Cabernet del Diablo Cabernet Sauvignon from Central Valley in Chile. Sorry, Val Central as it's we have to call it now for some reason. Now, Cabernet del Diablo, for me, it's one of those labels where you can almost like pick it off the shelf regardless of the varietal, and it's going to do something pretty reasonable. Had the Pinot Grigio recently, which was okay. Cabernet Sauvignon usually my favourite of the bunch. And it's classic Chile on the nose. There's a bit of that blackcurrant pastel, a bit of that slightly minty edge, but there's also this Mediterranean warmth coming through. Sometimes they miss out on that Mediterranean warmth. I know it's nowhere near the Mediterranean, but there's this warm, dusty edge that I get here. Yeah, a bit of vanilla, lots of that berry flavour. I've never tried aging this wine. Oz Clark, a friend of mine, I remember going to his house and he pulled out a vertical of Jacob's Creek Shiraz Cabernet. And it was remarkable how the wines that were like 10, 12 years old, remarkable how they'd aged. This for me is a wine that you can almost do the same with. And it's not the sort of wine that you'd think of aging, but I think there's probably 5 years more in bottle ahead of that, if you care to keep it. Okay, next wine down. Wakefield Cabernet Sauvignon from Clare Valley in South Australia. In South Australia, this is labelled Taylor's, but because it's so easy to confuse a bottle of port with a bottle of Australian Cabernet Sauvignon, the people who make the port have decided that the people who make the South Australian Cabernet Sauvignon shouldn't label it as Taylor's. Make your own conclusions. It smells like Cabernet Sauvignon, and it smells like Cabernet Sauvignon from somewhere warm, rather than sometimes Cabernet Sauvignon comes across as being blackcurranty. This comes across as blackberry-like, but we're still with this like I don't know if how you can smell firmness, but you can smell that something is a bit more serious than Cabernet Sauvignon is very seldom jammy. Let's have a taste. Well, Clare Valley sometimes gets these. Clare Valley Reds sometimes get at this eucalyptus edge, and there's a bit of that there, but there's also this blackberry. If I have a problem with it, I suppose there's two problems. One of the things is I'd almost have rather them not done it as a straight Cabernet Sauvignon and blended in something like South Australia. They often blend in Shiraz, but in Clare Valley, often the thing that they used for blending is Malbec, and it'd be really nice to have seen a little bit more perfumed, fleshier Malbec in there. The other problem I have with it is I don't know whether they've acidified this wine, but there's certainly something here where it feels like there's wine and then there's something else which doesn't quite sit nicely with it. So not sure about that one. I said it was 5 Cabernet Sauvignons. Well, this is something that maybe makes it 4.8 Cabernet Sauvignons. This is the Wine Society's Saint-Julien, made by Chateau Béchevel, and in Bordeaux there are very, very few wines that are 100% made from any grape. So typical Saint-Julien is in one of those appellations next to Pauillac, Margaux, Saint-Estèphe, that part of what they call the Médoc, where Cabernet Sauvignon has the upper hand, but they still blend the wines. So Cabernet Sauvignon here would make up maybe 60 to 80% of the wine, plus some Merlot, plus some Cabernet Franc, maybe a bit of Petit Verdot, and maybe some Malbec even. But let's have a sniff and see what we think. Well, it's very Bordeaux. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a freshness to it. Sometimes Cabernet Sauvignon can just go too plush, too ripe. Bordeaux seems to manage to do it in a way where it just about ripens in good vineyards, and you get this blackcurrant edge. Some people say cassis. Cassis for me almost like implies just a bit too much ripeness. So it's more that blackcurrant edge tinged with either, depending on whether you spend your time sharpening pencils or smoking cigars, it's either pencil shavings or cigar box. And I get that pencil shavings edge here. And also, it smells like it's come from near the sea, because Bordeaux's not all that far away from the Atlantic. And there's like a briny edge here, which I find very attractive. Yeah, good wine. It's refreshing. It's growing as you taste it. There's this black curranty edge that just seems to be expanding and maybe picking up these earthy mineral characters on the way. This Atlantic briny freshness and that cedary cigar box edge. Pencil shavings. I don't smoke cigars, but I do sharpen pencils. Nice wine. Fourth wine, Cabernet Sauvignon. We're back in Australia, but at the opposite end of Australia from the previous one. Margaret River Cabernet Sauvignon, Howard Park, Leston Cabernet Sauvignon, 2006. Now there's different bits of Margaret River. There's North Margaret River, where it's warmer, and there's South Margaret River, where it's cooler. Northern end have a riper, rounder, plusher flavour. Southern end can have like a vegetal, almost celery type flavour. Let's see what this is. Maybe this feels like a bit more of the southern edge. There's a bit of that celery, a bit of the cabbagey, maybe the vegetal end. It's not something. It's for me. It's a distinctive flavour, but it's not necessarily a positive flavour. There's lovely black currant edges behind it, but this vegetal edge intrudes for me. Yeah, I find that intense. There's these big flavour spikes, but not necessarily enjoyable. Just because something is concentrated doesn't mean it's great. So I find that good, but not as interesting as I want it to be. Yeah. Final wine, Torres Maslaplana, 2005 Cabernet Sauvignon from Penedès in Catalonia, Spain. I know I shouldn't say Catalonia, Spain. I'm probably causing inter-nation wars as I speak. But yes, this is from northeast Spain, and Maslaplana used to be labelled Torres Black Label, and in the 70s there was some wine competition where Torres Black Label beat some nobby Bordeaux, and has had a reputation since. Since then, though, other Spanish wines have had more of a reputation. They've been growing and growing, and also they've been growing and growing in price. Whereas this, I don't know what the price was in the 70s, but I think this is about 20 quid now. And if it's the quality that it was in the 70s, well, maybe it's something of a bargain. Well, it does smell pretty good. And what I like about it, it doesn't smell like it's trying too hard. It smells like it's confident in being a Cabernet Sauvignon from a warm, dusty climate. There's this certainly a Spanish accent. I mean, you could almost like call it Rioja Cabernet Sauvignon if you want to lump Spain as being Rioja. But there is this dusty, herby Mediterranean warmth to it, which is really intriguing. Classy wine. Fruits, fabulous, rounded but not too ripe, and but then it's the bits round it. There's the oak aging, which adds this vanilla sheen, but you can taste the warm earth that the grapes have been grown in. It feels like somewhere where it's very warm and dusty during the day, but it's not too hot during the night. There's no hint of raisin flavours there. I like that very much, and maybe a toss-up between that and the Saint-Julien for my two wines of the day, but they're both pretty good. See you soon.